And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. Sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. Sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming at you in preparation for the topic that we're about to check here. And actually, you already know what we're going to be talking about. I'm Dana Augusta, along with Charles Combs, once again, and we're going to be surprised, and we're going to draw and what our topic is going to be. You already know what the topic is. We don't know, okay? So this is going to be a little fun. This is going to be a surprise to us, but you already know what we're talking about. So what we're going to do like a blind draw on the topic that we're going to be discussing, since we're going to spend a year in the league. What we normally do is we pick a league randomly, and we pick a year randomly, thanks to the Google number generator that we have here. And Chuck, we did this before. We did the 2002 college football season a few months back. That was a pretty fun episode to do because it was very research intensive, but it was also a fun episode to do because it brought us back a lot of stuff. And you were very critical of certain Ohio State quarterbacks, which I remember correctly. That was also a very fun episode, in total,
It was.
So, Chuck, right now we're going to do our drawing, and the 5 sports we're going to be doing is Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, college football, and college basketball. And for Major League Baseball, the years are going to be from 1940 to 2015, the NFL from 1960 to 2015, NBA 1960 to 2015, and college football and college basketball, we're going to maintain it 1960 to 2015. I went with Major League Baseball a little bit longer since it's been around longer. And 1940 is like a really good cutoff point for us. So anyway, we're going to draw and see which league we're going to be talking about first. I got the number generator up here. Is there any particular league or any particular year that you're looking to do, that you kind of like rooting for or whatever at this point?
I don't know. Maybe perhaps MLB, because I don't think we've done anything pertaining to baseball in a while. So
right.
That might would be cool. And as far as the year,
it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. We're going to generate it right now. And the number we have is ask as thou shalt receive. Number 1, Major League Baseball.
Okay, crazy.
So we're going to
crazy how that works.
So we're going to be doing Major League Baseball, but the year we're going to be doing, we're about to find that out, between 1940 and 2015. 1940 and 2015 in Major League Baseball. And the year we're going to do is 2011. I was hoping not to do 1994. I mean, the strike year. But yeah, we got 2011.
Okay.
Which is, if I'm not mistaken, that was the Tigers and was that the Tigers and
probably the Cardinals, right?
Yeah. 2015, 2011. No, we moved here in 2011. So that was the Cardinals and Rangers.
Oof. Yeah.
That was the Cardinals and Rangers in that World Series, which was a good World Series, by the way. It went 7 games.
It did?
If I'm not mistaken, it went 7 games.
I don't even remember anything about it. Let me see. I can tell you. Give me a split second. Yeah, they beat them in 7. I don't even remember
That was the when the Cardinals were the Rangers had 1 out away from winning the World Series, and John Freese hits a triple to force extra innings, and the Cardinals win it in 6, win game 6 to force a game 7. And that was the incident when Joe Buck, just like his father, said, "And we'll see you tomorrow night," just like his father did in the '88 World Series.
Okay, well,
the '91 World Series. I'm sorry, between the Braves and the Twins. But 2011, that was the Rangers and the Cardinals, which went 7 games. And we're going to talk about the season. We're going to talk about all of the happenings and stuff like that, which you guys are tuned in for. But hey, that's a surprise to us, and we're doing Major League Baseball, so stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back to talk about it right after we intro this show.
Sports from back in the day. From Atlanta, it's Dana on the mic, talking old school legends, bringing history to life. We go deep like a spiral in the Superdome. Back when athletes left the game due to talking alone. Jordan fadeaways, Jackie in the zone, Ollie in the ring, man, he stood all alone. From the Negro Leagues to the ABA, we break it all down, the classic way. It's Charles from the district, straight out the boot. Southern University pride, repping truth in the booth. From Baton Rouge to the nation's capital, legends on deck. Yeah, we factual, tales of the greats, gold chains and all. Baseball, who dreams in that football brawl? No clickbait, no fluff, just the facts we say. It's historically speaking sports from back in the game. So sit back, tune in, and hit replay. It's historically speaking sports, the classic way.
Some baseball seasons are remembered for champions. Others are remembered for unforgettable players. But every once in a while, a season delivers everything. Record-breaking performances, historic collapses, incredible comebacks, and a World Series that still has fans shaking their heads years later. Welcome to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dana Auguster. My fellow co-host, Charles Combs, will be around shortly. In this episode, we will deliver our latest edition of our series, A Year in the League, where we will discuss and dissect the 2011 Major League Baseball season, and boy, there is a lot there. The unforgettable 2011 Major League Baseball season was a year when Justin Verlander dominated the American League, a year where Matt Kemp came within inches of one of the greatest individual seasons in modern baseball history. It was also the final season of Albert Pujols' legendary run in St. Louis before free agency changed the baseball landscape. Also, we'll revisit one of the wildest final days in regular season history when the Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves completed stunning September collapses while the Tampa Bay Rays and the St. Louis Cardinals pulled off miraculous postseason berths. Then we'll relive an October filled with unforgettable drama that ended with David Freese becoming a baseball legend as the Cardinals captured one of the most improbable World Series championships ever. All that plus a post-game rant by yours truly, so stay tuned for that as we turn back the clock to 2011, a season where every night seemed to produce another unforgettable chapter in baseball history. This is the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, where we give you the best of sports from back in the day. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm Dana Augusta, along with my partner in crime, Charles Combs, coming to you on the night. We're recording this at the night of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and fitting that we'd be talking about Major League Baseball tonight. And as you could tell by what you've read earlier and by what you heard previous to this in this episode, we're going to be talking about the 2011 Major League Baseball season. And going into this, I have to say that I knew that the 2011 baseball season was interesting. That's an understatement, because the last month of that season and the playoffs in general was was extremely entertaining. And we're going to start talking about the 20 season by saying something about baseball in general. I'd like to start there. So before we do that, Charles, welcome back. My co-host, he's back in. Chuck, how you doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. Just good. I know when we did the kind of like the spin the wheel type of deal, I was hoping that MLB came up, because it had been a minute since we had kind of discussed baseball. So I'm really excited for this episode, and looking forward to kind of delving into some baseball, because it's been a minute since we
it's been a minute. We talked about, previously, I think we did our Forgotten Franchise episode about the Montreal Expos. We came up with our all-time all-star team for Major League Baseball during our lifetimes, which is another well-received episode that we had here on the program. But tonight we're going to be taking a deep dive into one particular season, and that's the 2011 Major League Baseball season. And I want to start things off by talking about this, okay? And I think this goes to a big problem that Major League Baseball has had since maybe the late 90s, is that you've had some very entertaining series and some very entertaining storylines in baseball over the last 25 years. But in my opinion, baseball has gone relatively unnoticed. So I decided to put this together, and I realized this. Over the last 25 years, 26 years, starting from the year 2000, we've had 7 World Series go 7 games. In the meantime, you've had the NBA go 7 games in the same time period only 5 times, which begs the question, do you think that this era of baseball is one of the most overlooked eras in all of sports for right now? Because think about this. Okay, 2001. Diamondbacks play the Yankees. That goes 7 games, and that ends on a walk-off hit by Luis Gonzalez. 2002, Angels-Giants. That went 7 games. And in that series, in that game 7, it wasn't decided until the late innings when the Angels beat Barry Bonds and the Giants. 2011, which we're going to talk about tonight, the Cardinals beating the Rangers in 7. 2014, Giants and Royals. That went 7, and that was decided about 1 run in game 7. 2016, Cubs and Indians. That went 10 innings. I don't have to remind you about that, Chuck, because you're a Cubs fan. That went 10 innings, and the Cubs win that one. Astros, Dodgers. That went 7, but that series was kind of tainted by that whole Astros and the trash can scandal, kind of sullied that year. Nationals, Astros. Nationals win that one. in 7. Dodgers, Blue Jays last year, that also went 7, and also Game 7 decided by 1 run. So all that being said, you've had a very good, solid era of exciting baseball over the last 25 years, but it pales in comparison as far as in popularity is concerned. It pales in comparison to the NBA Finals. In that same time period, since 2000, you've only had 5 series to go 7 games. 2005 Spurs Pistons, which was a very lackluster 7-game series to be completely honest. 2010 Lakers Celtics, other than the fact that it's the Lakers and the Celtics, Lakers win that one kind of going away in Game 7. 2013 Heat Spurs. Now that was a pretty interesting series to say the least. 2016 Warriors Cavaliers, really good series, outstanding Game 7. And then 2025 Thunder and Pacers. That's the only Game 7s to appear in the NBA Finals, but the NBA, in my opinion, is far surpassed baseball as far as popularity. So I said all of that to bring this up. Like, baseball over the last 25 years has suffered in popularity. And I've always wondered why, because you have 7-game series, and a lot of them are really good Game 7s. But for whatever reason, baseball has kind of lacked in popularity.
I have some theories on that. Pretty much, for starters, before I kind of get into that, you kind of went through 2 series in particular. Of course, I know about Cubs and Indians, but I want to focus on Astros over Dodgers and Nationals over Astros, right?
Okay.
How do you fail the test and you have answers? Basically.
Exactly.
You had answers to the test and you still failed the test. Man, like garbage. And I'm telling you, in honesty, I know the Astros, that championship should be declared vacant, pretty much. And like how baseball always have these, not getting too far off the scope of the conversation, they always have these morality things and all of that, like some of the steroid users and all of that. But yet and still, some of these people like Altuve, when they get ready to come up for the Hall of Fame, they may vote for him, no questions asked, even though they were blatantly cheating. You know what I mean? Like, what about them? But anyway, in terms of my theories, I think a lot of it is just the fact, the decline in American players and all of that. And even though it's a lot of Latin players, it's not like a lot of a steep decline in American players. And I also think a lot of times we just have more choices, more things to watch.
Right.
And baseball used to be an afternoon sport. And it just seems like they just exclusively put it on like 8, 9 o'clock Eastern. Who's going to sit up and watch a baseball game? Something that's just that slow pace that time of night. And then I also think perhaps one of the most important things, I think the changes in the style of play and all of that, we may get into some of that. They've kind of, until recently, a lot of the analytics and stuff has kind of legislated and it's kind of legislated a lot of the athleticism out of the game. Like things we used to love used to be safety squeeze, suicide squeeze, hit and run, stolen base. Those things until recent years with the pitch clock introduction, really became dormant. And those were some of the more exciting aspects. Like for instance, you'll have when we were coming up, the Cardinals were a running team. It would be nothing like, okay, the Cardinals will come to San Diego and versus Benito Santiago at the time. And of course, later Pudge, a running team. You would want to see that matchup, okay? Like how is, they run all the time. Are they going to be able to run with reckless abandon with Benito behind the plate? Because he's a formidable challenge and a formidable deterrent of that. But then I also think the biggest thing is over the last 25 years is the significant decline in the quality of the announcing. I think announcing is a very, very important component. Like, for instance, like a lot of times in, not to bring pro wrestling into this, but I think pro wrestling is, like a lot of times you would have things in wrestling, especially the old NWA days, with Jim Ross before he went to WWF, but we used to have the dean of broadcasting, old Gordon Soley.
Yep.
You have a lot of angles, and the angles themselves would be good, but the broadcasters role, like Gordon Soley, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, even WWE back in the Jesse the Body and Vince McMahon days when he was in the booth, they were an essential component in getting those angles over to the audience and getting them emotionally invested into said wrestler or said angle. Same thing when we were coming up in baseball, right? Man, during the day, I was a Cub fan. Just as much as I wanted to see the Cubs, I wanted to see Harry Carey, what he would say. He would say anything. He was an integral character as part of the baseball that helped me begin to love baseball. Then you would go to the weekend. You remember you would have Vin Scully on the NBC Game of the Week with Joe Garagiola. You remember that Kirk Gibson home run that you alluded to in Game 1 of the '88 series. Imagine that without Vin Scully on the call. He's the one that really got that over. Even though it was an exciting moment, he got that over. And then, like in basketball, we used to have Brent Musburger and Pat O'Brien, Billy Cunningham. Then we went to Marv and the Czar of the Telestrator. Then, even though I don't like Mike Breen as much, he's okay.
He's okay.
Like you talked about the 2013 Heat over Spurs. That bang when Ray Allen hit that three to tie the game, when basically the Spurs had the game and the championship won. Now, and even I hate the Cardinals, but used to have
Jack Buck,
right?
Yep.
Now we've gone from Jack Buck to Joe Buck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I'm going to allude to Jack Buck later. Okay, because when he announced the 91 World Series and he says, "We'll see you tomorrow night," every time I hear that, I get chills, because that's all he had to say. That's all he had to say when Kirby Puckett hit the home run in Game 6. For me, it was those guys. I remember, like Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola and Tony Kubek on the NBC Game of the Week. I remember Al Michaels doing baseball when it was on ABC.
Monday Night Baseball on ABC. Yes.
Right. I mean, I remember that, and they brought so much character, and they became a part of the action, and they became like now you have games every day. If you really want to watch a baseball game, you could find one somewhere. But and I think that with you having the ability to watch every team every night, if you wanted to, on any station, any sports station around, and then you could buy the packages where you could get every game. It just kind of lost its luster. Everybody said there's no such thing as a good thing, and I think in baseball it is, because you see it so much, all 162 games, that you kind of lost its luster. It's like when we were growing up, we used to look forward to the NBC Game of the Week.
Correct.
And it could be the Cardinals versus the Cubs, or the Yankees versus Red Sox, or the Giants versus Dodgers, or and it was always a really good game, And I think another thing that kind of leads into that, I think, was free agency, like the All-Star game tonight. The All-Star game, first of all, I think All-Star games at this point are played out, and the reason why that is free agency. Because you don't have that novelty of it anymore. In interleague play, you have a World Series when you have two teams that never face each other during the year, and the novelty of that is gone. You see the Yankees play the Dodgers in the World Series, and two biggest markets in the United States facing off against each other in the World Series. But now the Cardinals and Yankees will probably play each other 3 or 4 times during the year, And plus, you have probably some guys that play for the Dodgers used to play for the Yankees, and vice versa. So it kind of muddied the water, so to speak. When they went to interleague play, at first, I thought it was a good idea. But now thinking back on it, I wish they never would have done it. I wish baseball was so unique in the fact that you have one set of teams and you have another set of teams over here that will never play each other unless certain players play each other in the All-Star game. And two teams may meet up in the World Series that have no history at all.
And
And I thought that was like really cool.
And I think that in addition to that, I think that they further watered the game down, because also used to be a very intriguing part of World Series matchups, as well as All-Star game matchups. I'll start with the World Series first. You would be like, okay, like, especially when that American League team would have to go on the road and play at the National League ballpark.
Right,
and would have to play under the National
League rules
instead of the DH. Now the pitcher has to bat for himself, but that can be an integral thing, because, like a lot of times when it comes to things like in terms of pitchers handling the bat with runners, like most times, unless that pitcher previously played in the National League, if they are strictly American League, it would be very intriguing to see if the pitcher could get that bunt down and move the runner over, because they customarily do not have to do that. Whereas, that would be very interesting. And then even like all of the additional, because the pitcher has to bat, the additional things that the American League manager would have to do that they
the additional strategy that they never really had to do during the regular season.
Like the double switch, being able to manage the lineup. You got to go to the umpire. Okay, this dude, the pitcher spot, instead of ninth, he's now batting fourth. He's in all of that. So now, since they've made all of the rules uniform, they've completely done away with that intriguing aspect of it. And then also regarding the All-Star game, I used to love the fact, in addition to the novelty of them not facing pitcher Scott, I remember, what was it? Was that in 86 when Dwight Gooden started the All-Star game? And then I also think in 98, either in the league hadn't started yet, or it was very early, when Pedro struck out the side.
That was in 99. That was in 99 in Boston. Yeah.
You didn't have the scouting report because you didn't face them. Then also those All-Star games would begin at like 7 Eastern or something. So that first inning, that would be
daylight.
It's daylight, but the shadow is over home plate. So it's already hard enough to hit this dude. But with the pitcher mound in the sunlight and the shadow of the grandstand over home plate, Dwight coming with 98-degree heat, then coming 12-6 on the breaking ball in the shadows, and it just makes it all that more difficult. And it's just like, now the games are so late, they've kind of removed all of the unpredictable elements out of it.
Right. So in that same stretch, and I kind of put this together, and we've had 7 World Series in the space of 26 years to go 7 games. But you've had this a lot of different times in baseball. But there was one era in particular that I've noticed, that you had you had a string of 7 World Series to go 7 games, which was 1952, 55, 57, 58, 60, 62, and 65. And if you could add to that 68, 67, and 68 also during that stretch, which a lot of people consider the greatest era in baseball history, because, I mean, the 50s, that was the Yankees and Dodgers, and the Yankees and the Dodgers playing against each other damn near every year. The Braves popped in there once in 57 and 57. 60, that was the Pirates and the Yankees and the Bill Mazeroski home run. 65, that was the Dodgers over the Twins. So that was like one of the prime eras of baseball. And baseball had never been as popular, since then. So I just thought that was just something to bring up. One of those World Series that we're going to be talking about tonight happened in this era, 2011. Cardinals versus the Rangers. And again, awesome World Series, and I'm going to give everybody like a little snapshot of that season. Before we do that, Chuck, what are some of the things that, while researching this, that you found interesting?
Found very interesting. I looked into, without kind of giving it away too early, we had a couple of historic big time collapses
Yes.
and all of that. And I mean, really unconventional. I'm not going to say unconventional, but I'm just really big time collapses where even the Cubs wouldn't be able to manage to pull this off. You know, as snake bit as they've been, even the Cubs wouldn't have managed to blow one of these collapses. Even the Cubs wouldn't have been able to manage that. You know what I mean? And then also, I think also another one of the things too was like a lot of the, just in terms of like, I'm not going to say a juggernaut, but I'm saying like in particular in terms of a lot of the American League, it was like teams that win in 95 games, they're a wild card.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was crazy. Usually, you know, a 95 win team, you're perhaps at the very, very top of the standings. And it was like, no, you're just a wild card this year. And it's just insane. And then we also had some big time performances, not only in the batter's box, but then also one in particular, like on the pitcher's mound, you know, like a historic season of a pitcher, but then they kind of went, you know, usually like kind of, which we may get to, like in terms of the Braves, some of the Braves pitchers, like that big time rotation in the 90s, a lot of times they would have like huge regular season success. But then when they go to the postseason, you know, it was not quite as dominant, quite as successful. And obviously that can be attributed to the fact that you're playing against much better teams each day, but still the difference in the difference in the performance from regular season to postseason was striking.
So let me give you a little snapshot of the season. Okay, the 2011 as a little quick snapshot, and we're going to go into some of this, you know, in detail. The pitching performance you're talking about, I'm assuming, is Justin Verlander.
Yes.
National League MVP, American League MVP, excuse me, and winning the Cy Young Award, okay, with the Detroit Tigers in 2011. You know, he had this unbelievable season. We're going to get to him in a second, and the Detroit Tigers. Also, in this era of baseball was something that you hear a lot about today, but this was the beginning stages of it, which we call sabermetrics, and which is the movement influencing roster construction around the league, okay? And it's used to evaluate player performance, measure a player's true contribution to winning, and identify undervalued talent. If you've ever seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, which is a great movie, by the way, it kind of explains it where basically where teams will look at different players' statistics and how they fare in different situations, okay? And one of the main statistics that they came up with is something that they started using in religiously over the last 20 years is something called WAR, which is wins above replacement. And it estimates the total number of wins a player contributes to their team over replacement level player, such as a player on the bench or an available minor leaguer. Sabermetrics for me does have its advantages, but in my opinion, it kind of takes the power away from the manager. You know, in other words, back in the day, some of the greatest managers of all time, Casey Stengel, John McGraw, Danny Murtaugh, Walter Alston, a lot of these managers would basically manage from the seat of their pants. In other words, they would just have a feeling about a guy.
Hunch.
You know, just have a hunch. Okay, this guy, he may have struggled against left-handers all year long, but you come into the playoffs of the World Series and he's facing a lineup that has a few left-handers in key positions in the batting order. I'm going with that guy. Why? He doesn't do well. He's due. That's their excuse. I got a feeling he's due. Okay, and he comes out there and strikes out the side. It's like, where did that come from? And it makes the manager look like a genius. But sometimes numbers in baseball sometimes lie because, you know, a lot of times, you know, you could go out there, like, what's the old adage? You could go up to plate and you could hit a home run to win the game. You come out the very same position the next day and strike out and lose the game. Baseball is very unforgiving in that way. And that's the way, and sabermetrics, in my opinion, at times the take the control from the manager and to puts it in places it on analytics. But sometimes analytics doesn't tell you the whole story.
Correct. And I think most of these things, because basketball has sort of been befallen by similar type of fate. Like a lot of times it takes it out of the hands of the people that play the game, know the game, and can feel the game into
Right.
people that they didn't play. So it's certain things that only someone that played would know. Like for example, they'll come up with things like exit velocity, things like that. Who cares?
Right.
Did sometimes your hardest hit ball are outs if it hit right to someone. Other times you'll hit a little weak broken bat thing that has eyes, and
Yeah.
somehow find a deep defensive hole at the
Right.
most important time. For example, like one of those 7-game series that you alluded to, it was decided on a broken bat blooper. Luis Gonzalez off
In
of
2001 of
Mario
Arizona.
Rivera, because you remember everybody. I remember, who was it? Was it for the dude that Dion Douse with the water used to play, Tim McCarver. Him.
Right.
I remember he was saying perhaps he want to play second and short, kind of halfway, because a lot of times that cutter Rivera throws breaks a lot of bats and result in bloopers and stuff. He
Yep.
had said it right before that.
Right before,
And
yeah, I
then lo and
remember that.
behold,
That's
they had it
right.
all in, and he blooped it, and it went right over their head. And had they been playing halfway, that would have probably been an out, and the game would have continued. But I just think it's like a lot of useless things, like exit velocity, exit angle, things
Right.
like
Nobody
was it
cared.
a hit or was it an out? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
like really. I mean, it just overkill sometimes.
Then you had, like you alluded to earlier, the historic September collapses of two teams, the Boston Red Sox and Atlanta Braves. And ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned towards the end of the show, because yours truly has a rant in store about these two teams and their collapses and how I truly feel about that, because quite frankly, that had no business happening at all. It just shouldn't have happened. And in my opinion, it could not have happened to two better fan bases. Anyway, okay, you had the final day of the regular season, which a lot of people consider the greatest single day of baseball in decades. Okay, the Rangers went back-to-back American League pennants, led by manager Ron Washington, one of the most underrated managers in the last 30 years. Yeah, guys like Michael Young, Josh Hamilton, pitcher C.J. Wilson, Adrian Beltre, um, uh, and others. I mean, just some really, really great players on that team. They went back-to-back American League pennants. Nelson Cruz is the one I couldn't think of, but it's Nelson Cruz also. And one of the best World Series ever that went 7 games, and the Cardinals winning their 11th World Series title. But we're going to get all of that in a second. Now, heading into this year, into the 2011 Major League season, the defending World Series champs were the San Francisco Giants. They beat the Rangers the year before, 4 games to 1 in 2010. It was the first World Series championship won by the Giants since moving to San Francisco. Their last title was in 1954 when they were the New York Giants, playing in Manhattan at the Polo Grounds. Edgar Renteria was the series' most valuable player. He was known for that, as well as the single that he hit off of Charles Nagy in Game 7 of the 97 World Series to give my Marlins their first World Series title. Scoring great counsel and everything. So that was like one of the coolest moments for me ever. Going into that year, though, the odds-on favorite to get to the World Series was the Yankees and the Phillies. That's what everybody was talking about, because Yankees, they had, of course, the best team, maybe the best team money could buy. In fact, the starting infield, the payroll just for the Yankees starting infield was more than like maybe 4 teams combined, So the Yankees had CC Sabathia, AJ Burnett, Bartolo Colon, Jorge Posada, Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, Mark Teixeira, Curtis Granderson, Nick Swisher, Brett Gardner. They were loaded as usual. We're talking about the early 2000s to mid 2011. This is kind of like the first few years of them playing at the new Yankee Stadium. Phillies was another team with Roy Halladay and Cole Hamels, Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, and Shane Victorino. But in the era of super teams at that time, there was another team that considered themselves a super team, and that was the Boston Red Sox. They acquired Carl Crawford and Adrian Gonzalez in the offseason to go with guys like Josh Beckett and Papelbon and Dustin Pedroia and Big Poppy. This was a team that was supposed to be challenging the New York Yankees in the division and possibly overtake them because the story was in 2011 that the New York Yankees were starting to age, were starting to show their age. Okay, Crawford had signed as a free agent from the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Red Sox traded to get Adrian Gonzalez from the Padres for a number of different players, including one guy by the name of Anthony Rizzo, who would later go on to be a hero for the Chicago Cubs in 2016. So at this point, the prevailing wisdom was at the time in all sports, I think, this was like the growing fad of creating super teams in sports. You saw it with the Miami Heat. You also saw it in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles when they considered themselves a dream team, when they had Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson and Shady McCoy and that group, but of course it never really materialized into anything. So that was a very interesting time in sport, I think.
Yes, it was. And then, unlike basketball where super teams can work somewhat, and then obviously with all 22 in football is less likely because it's just so much more that goes into it. I would say baseball is kind of akin to like kind of football where you just can't throw a bunch of guys together and all of that because it depends on like a lot of factors a lot of times, like your home ballpark or like, how you playing. Cause like more than any sport, I think, well, football too in certain cities, but more than any sport, baseball, it's 162 games. It's a lot of pressure for you to perform. If you're not, usually, you get off to a slow start. They're like, okay, he'll be okay. Then you start getting around that Memorial Day. If that bat hasn't heated up yet, they're like, okay, now, what's going on with this dude? We paid him $170 million. We had the quarter pole and he's done nothing. And then like a lot of times that can bring a lot of pressure. And then just especially, in the clubhouse, as with any team sport, talent is an important component, but also, being able to fit into the culture or kind of enhance the culture or at minimum don't detract from the culture or just ruin the clubhouse and things like that. Because you would just imagine, you're with these guys all day, every day. Yeah. So it's imperative that you guys have a cohesive rapport with one another and all of that. So just rolling the ball out in baseball is very hard because there's a lot of different factors that goes into baseball success. And then be quite frank with you, you need a lot of luck, in terms of the injury bug, most importantly. And then, of course, then secondly, sometimes you just need some luck in general. Just, through a 162 game schedule, you need some luck here and there anyway to kind of make sure you have positive and good fortunes.
Okay, so just heading into the regular season, there was a couple of notes that I put here, and that happened during the season that's kind of immaterial to what we're going to be talking about. Just some regular season notes. Okay, first one. This was the final season of the then Florida Marlins and their time at then Sun Life Stadium. Now, someone who has followed the Marlins since their inception, they've always was like playing in a football stadium. It was a multi-purpose stadium, but that stadium was just not built for baseball. It just wasn't. And the Marlins have had more success than a lot of people really remember, really give them credit for. And this was their final season as the Florida Marlins and their time at Sun Life Stadium. The next season, they would change their name to the Miami Marlins, and they will move into their brand new Marlins Park, which is now Lone Depot Field with the retractable roof. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of stadiums with retractable roofs. I'm just not. I'm like a purist, you know, play outside on grass, that sort of thing. However, if you're playing in South Florida for this during the summer where the weather could change, and it's just like Louisiana, what's the old saying back home? If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes because it'll change.
Yes.
You know, it's like that in South Florida. Okay. And they built a retractable roof stadium in South Florida, and they also built one in Phoenix. And you kind of need them there, you know, to be real. You're playing baseball in South Florida with the heat, humidity, and the weather that could change at any given moment. Okay, so they needed a retractable roof stadium in Florida. And I've never been to Lone Depot Park, but from what it looks like it's a pretty nice place. You know, it's certainly an upgrade. And while researching this, I realized also that, and I didn't realize this until later, like a few years ago, that it was built on the site of the old Orange Bowl.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
You know, it's built right on they tore down the old Orange Bowl, and they built it on its ruins, you know, and they took the old famous Orange Bowl sign and they have it in like some kind of, how would you describe it? It's like some kind of sculpture that they have in front of the stadium. Okay, with the letters like impaled in the ground and stuff, in certain shapes and angles and stuff like that. So it's really cool that they paid homage to the old Orange Bowl by keeping the letters that was on the stadium that said Miami Orange Bowl, and they have it in a sculpture in front of the stadium, which is pretty cool. Three teams retired famous numbers. The Braves retired Bobby Cox's number 6. The Tigers retired number 11 for Sparky Anderson, and the Padres retired Trevor Hoffman's 51. Okay. Also during the season, Mariano Rivera became the all-time saves leader on September 19th. So Mariano Rivera, the hand of God, the only player so far to be voted into the Hall of Fame unanimously. You know.
Holy.
So
Holy. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let me go back first. All right. First of all right. Now, is the old Sun Life Stadium and the old venerable Joe Robbie Stadium one and the same?
Yeah, it's the same place. They just
Okay.
renovated it. They did
Okay.
some serious renovation to it. That's the one with it has like a canopy roof now and stuff, and that's where like the World Cup games have been being played this year in Miami. That's where it is. That's
Okay.
the old Joe Robbie Stadium, but it just underwent some major renovations and added the little canopy roof to it now.
Okay. And then on top of that, they built the new stadium on the grounds of the old Orange Bowl. That's the old house of the venerable veteran, the old Don Street.
Don Straught. Oh yeah.
I love
As
me
a
some
Charger
Don
fan,
Straught,
as
boy.
a Charger fan, that is like, oh my God. You know, I've had about 5 heart attacks watching that game when I was a kid.
Now on to Mariano, I don't want to sound like an idiot, so I may, but okay. He's a great closer, perhaps the greatest in the game. But one qualm I've always had with he, as well as these current closers, is they're specialists. They got to come in at the beginning of the 9th inning with nobody on base, table perfectly set. Every now and then in the postseason, they'll bring him in. He'll come into the 8th inning if somebody gets on and all that. But most of the time, he has to come in and save the game with a perfectly clean table. So
Right.
he gets more save opportunities since he only has to pitch 1 inning. Whereas in yesteryear, I'm talking Bruce Sutter,
Right.
D. Smith, Dan Quisenberry, Kid Takovi, the Goose.
Yeah.
Goose Gossage, a lot of times, man, they'll bring them in the 7th. They're like, okay, he got to go 3 innings to close out the ball game. To me, that is infinitely more difficult
than his accuracy.
Than the Eck. The Eck, he gotta come in there. What's the other dude? Jeff Reardon. Yeah, they gotta come in, and they got because a lot of times I did some research in terms of this. If you compare the innings pitched of closers from that era, like Dan Quisenberry, got Doyle Alexander, guys like that.
Right.
John Franco, the timeless Jesse Orozco, boy. Steve Bedrosian. Boy, I'm going way back now. But anyway, Todd Rohrera with the Cardinals. But they pitch more innings.
Yeah, they did.
You know what I mean? They had to pitch more innings, and I think it's considerably more difficult. And I think a lot of times when you are kind of assessing closers, and I'm not saying he's not the best, because he is. He has the postseason success. But I think a lot of times it's much more nuanced than to simply just look at the number of saves someone had.
Now you got like a middle relief, long relief, middle relief. You in most cases, in most teams, you have like 2 setup men.
One back in the day, one for the 8th.
And then you bring in the closer for the 9th inning. Okay. Is Mariano Rivera one of the greatest closers of all time? Yes, he is. But to your point, it's like everything is so specialized now. It really is. I mean, they call him the hammer of God, but really, if you think about it, is to test really how great a person is, or great a player is, you don't necessarily remember the times that he was successful, which was often. You ought to remember the time that he was not. We talked about the one time that he was not. The 2001 Game 7 World Series against Arizona. The little blue single by Luis Gonzalez. Everybody remembers that. Okay.
And he gave up a hit to Otis Nixon too, which is unforgivable.
Yeah. Otis Nixon, my God, that's going back. You
didn't know I knew about that.
Yeah, Otis Nixon. Wow. You talking to somebody listening in Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, you got like, and the guys that you talked about, like Lee Smith. When Lee Smith came into the game, he coming in. In some cases, he might come in the 6th.
Yeah, because the Cubs, man, Cubs like
he was like another starter. He was like the second. He was like another starter out there that could go 6 innings on multiple days of the week. You know what I mean?
And then even not to divert the conversation too far off, but even we mentioned Verlander earlier, right? The biggest thing with me, went 24-5, 2.4 ERA with 250 strikeouts. But these are the 2 things that jump out, really. 251 innings pitched.
Right.
That is, and 6 complete games. That is putting in a full days and a full season's work.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
These starters, a lot of them don't even break 180 innings now.
Pitch count. Correct. I'm going to tell you that I say this all the time, and I think we ought to do a show about this, like records that will never be broken. Okay. The one record I know for sure that will never be broken in baseball. Okay. 1, we will not, I'm going to give you 2 actually. 1, when's the next time we're going to have a 300 game winner?
It has to be somebody that's good immediately and on a very good team.
Good immediately on a very good team and is good for long term. Okay, another one. For sure, we will never, ever have a pitcher to even approach Cy Young record. 511 career wins. No. That'll never happen.
That would never happen.
Because you would have to win, or Denny McClain in 1968, winning 30 games in a season. You will never see that again.
Bob Welch came close.
Yeah.
But it was more attributed to the team he was on.
Right.
What was that? It was either, I want to say it was 1990. He won like 27 games or something. But he was on the A's. So you remember that lineup. It's like, come on, man. if you can, even if you have ERA of 4, if you can give them 5 innings, you're going to win 20 games with that team.
Right.
So
and it's like longevity, and people don't want to like go the distance anymore, and it speaks to like pitchers don't want to get injured and pitch counts and everything else. I mean, this is like a totally different, even now compared to where it was in 2011, just 15 years ago, it was, essentially like a totally different time in baseball, than what it is now. Justin Verlander, we were just about to talk about the key players doing that year. Justin Verlander was right at the top of the list. 24 wins, you mentioned it, 24 wins, 2.4 ERA with 250 strikeouts, won the American League Cy Young and American League MVP. Okay, so if you're doing all of that, and then all of the innings that he pitched that year, you have no doubt but to win the MVP and, of course, Cy Young. Okay. Also during that year, he tossed a no-hitter against the Toronto Blue Jays on May 7th. Second career no-hitter. He had 4 strikeouts and 1 walk in that game. One of 3 no-hitters pitched that year, all of them in the American League. Okay. Now, give you some going through the awards. Okay. I love looking at the awards at different years, or who was the best pitcher and whatever. The rookies of the year, the National League Rookie of the Year was Craig Kemp for the Braves, and Jeremy Hellickson for the Tampa Bay Rays. Okay. They both won Rookie of the Year in 2011. Cy Young, we said Justin Verlander, American League. National League, Clayton Kershaw. You talk about
just quit.
Yeah, and he just retired. So he put in work. Okay. Manager of the Year, one of my all-time favorite. Manager of the Year, Arizona Diamondbacks, Kirk Gibson. National League Manager of the Year, for the first place Arizona Diamondbacks, division winner in the National League West that year. And your boy, American League Manager of the Year, Joe Madden. MVP Ryan Braun. We're going to talk about him when we talk about the National League. Ryan Braun, and of course, Justin Verlander in the American League Most Valuable Player. So these are guys that, even though it happened in 2011, and it seemed like a long time ago, but it wasn't really that long ago. If you really think about it, that's one of the things about doing the research for this. I was like, I remember all of this, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but 15 years.
Yeah. Goes by really quickly, and mentioned a lot of players who had a lot of career success. Now, since you're going to bring Ryan Braun up, I'll defer at this time to say what I have to say about him. I'll reserve my options to say what I have to say about that.
All right.
What I mean? He was a sucker. Ryan Braun was a sucker. I mean, straight up, he was a sucker, and not just because he played for the Brewers, which was bad enough, but Ryan Braun was a sucker. But he won.
You're gonna have to explain that one when we get to it. So I want to go down the winners of the Gold Glove, which is a defensive. I was once upon a time a defensive shortstop, so this is like my favorite category of awards. American League Gold Glove winners, pitcher Mark Buehrle of the Chicago White Sox, Matt Wieters at catcher for the Baltimore Orioles, first base Adrian Gonzalez of the Red Sox, second base Dustin Pedroia, also of the Red Sox, third base Adrian Beltre of the Rangers, shortstop Eric Ibar of the Angels, left field Alex Gordon of the Royals, center field Jacoby Ellsbury of the Red Sox, and Nick Markakis right field for the Orioles. In the National League, Gold Glove winners were Clayton Kershaw, pitcher for the Dodgers, catcher Yadier Molina of the Cardinals. Love that.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah, that dude was a beast.
He was on my all-time team. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
First baseman Joey Votto of the Cincinnati Reds. Second baseman Brandon Phillips of the Reds. Very underrated second baseman.
Very, very.
Placido Polanco, third baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. Shortstop Troy Tulowitzki of the Rockies. Left field Gerardo Parra of the Diamondbacks. Center field Matt Kemp of the Dodgers. who we're going to talk about a bit in a second because he had his career year that year. And right field, Andre Ethier, also of the Los Angeles Dodgers. But American League, we talked about Justin Verlander, one of three pitchers to pitch a no-hitter in this series in this year. The other two guys to throw no-hitters, Francisco Liriano of the Minnesota Twins pitched a no-hitter against the Chicago White Sox on May the 3rd, won it 1-0. And then the other one, Irvin Santana, the Angels, he's pitched a no-hitter over the Cleveland Indians on July 27th, winning that game 3-1. And doing research, I always kind of take time out to look at, okay, whenever you have somebody pitch a no-hitter, but they have a run scored on them, I want to know how that happened, okay? So basically what happened was that Irvin, in the second inning, Irvin Santana walked the batter, and that batter stole second. The next batter hits into a fielder's choice and moving the runner to third. And then from third base, Irvin Santana throws a pass ball, and the runner from third scores. So that's the only run that the Indians scored in that game on July 27th. But Irvin Santana, no hitter. So there you go. Now, before we get to the standings, anything that caught your eye about the American League that year?
No, just it was kind of like I mentioned earlier, the main thing was just how competitive the American League standings were.
Yes.
Usually if you win, for wild card sake, if you win like you win like right at 90 games, you're in. But that year, it was like it didn't matter. It was like, it was a lot of teams that did really, really well, but still missed the postseason because, most notably, you mentioned at the beginning of the year, right? That, they weren't the favorites, but you said it was the super team era. And I know you have to kind of go a bit more in depth with them a little later on, but the Bo Sox, they won 90 games.
Yep.
And they were home for October with 90 wins. They couldn't even get a wild card bid, which is insane, which tells you in terms of, I'm not going to necessarily, it's kind of nuanced, because I would say it's a lot of, obviously indicative of a lot of depth, a lot of depth in the American League that year. But usually if you have that many teams that can win 90 games, then conversely, that would have to mean that there's some scrubs at the bottom of the standings too.
Right.
But all of those teams were able to have 90 plus wins and all of that. So it's a combination of a lot of depth, as well as at the top, as well as in terms of the futility towards the lower part of the standings.
So we're not going to go bit by bit, blow by blow of games of the regular season. I'm just going to go through the standings, the final standings of the regular season.
Yes, sir.
Yankees finished on top in the American League East. The Yankees finished on top, 97-65 to your credit. The Rays finished second, 91-71. Red Sox third, 90-72, 7 games out of first. Toronto finished 81-81, right at 500. They were 16 games out of first. And then the Orioles rounding it up, 69-83, 28 games out of first. We're going to talk about the Orioles a little bit later on because they figured pretty highly toward the end of the year.
Okay.
In the Central, the Tigers win the division, 95-67, thanks to Justin Verlander, Miguel Cabrera, and the rest. Indians finished second, 80-82, 15 games out of first in second place in the division. White Sox finished third, 79-83. Royals, 71-91, 24 games out of first. Minnesota, the worst team by record, the worst team in the American League that year, 63-99, finishing 32 games out of first. And then in the AL West, the Rangers, looking to repeat as American League champs, they finished 96-66, 1 game behind the Yankees for the division, for the number 1 seed. They finished 10 games ahead of the Angels, which finished 86-76. Athletics, 74-88, 22 games out of first. And the Mariners, 67-95, 29 games out of first. So with all that being said, the Yankees win the division. They're the top seed in the American League playoffs. The Rangers finish second, the second seed. Tigers are the third seed. The fourth seed, the final wild card spot, is between the Rays and the Red Sox, which goes down to the final game of the regular season. We're going to get to that in a bit. Over in the National League, the team of the year, we're leading the National League, was MVP Ryan Braun. He wins National League MVP with the Brewers, 332 batting average, 33 home runs, 111 RBIs, 33 stolen bases. Clayton Kershaw wins the Cy Young, 21-5 on the year, 2.28 ERA, 248 strikeouts, which is at the time, which is his career high. But the player, in my opinion, that should have won MVP that year was Matt Kemp. He damn near won a Triple Crown. Okay. 324 batting average, 39 home runs, 126 RBIs, and 40 steals. The National League haven't had a Triple Crown winner since Joe Medwick in 1937 for the St. Louis Cardinals, which had a 374 batting average, 31 home runs, and 154 RBIs. Okay. And I will go to my grave saying this. Matt Kemp deserved it, even though he finished, eight 1/100ths of a point, in batting average from winning the Triple Crown, but they gave it to Ryan Braun of the Brewers. So you have some very choice words about Ryan Braun. What are those? What are your feelings about him?
Well,
I'm curious.
Thank you very much, because I'll exercise previously deferred option at this point in time. Okay, first let's start off with Matt Kemp now, because this is the key thing that you overlooking in the whole thing, right?
Uh-huh.
He nearly went Triple Crown, 324, 39 homers, 40 steals, 126 RBIs, all while dating Rihanna at the same time. All while dating Rihanna, because How can I put this? How can I put this? Okay, I got it. Like Smokey the Bandit. If I was Matt Kemp, probably would have been at least half the season. As Smokey the Bandit once said, in Smokey the Bandit, classic movie, the first one.
Yes.
That last two were garbage. To say, you remember when the old haunted house, they had all of the cops over there. Jackie Gleason was over there and all of that. Then they held him up so him and the bellman could run the liquor and all of that.
Right.
Then say and then he was like, "How can I thank you?" on the CV to the head of the haunted house. She was like, "Well, won't you come on over here and thank me yourself, right?"
Uh-huh.
Then Bert just said, "Well, I'd like to, but I'm too poop to pop, baby." So if I'm dating Rihanna, you can take 30 points off the batting average and all that, because half of them days I'd have been worth, especially at that time. We talking about
2011 Rihanna. Yeah.
We talking about rude boy Rihanna and all of that. I wouldn't have been worth the darn. Trust me on that. You know what I mean? I'd have been too poop to pop for half the season. You know what I mean? Now,
so he deserves a Triple Crown, in your opinion, just based on him being able to produce and put together these numbers while dating a very attractive mega superstar singer in Rihanna.
Now, and even with that now, being that you can put that kind of production together with a 2011 Rihanna, we might need to drug test him year round if you still got enough. No. Because how can you produce like that, man? Okay, because I'd have been taking days off left and right. I'm just telling you. But anyway, on to this clown Ryan Braun, right? This is the beef that I have. This is the beef that I have with this clown right here. You know what I mean? He did all that. He was a good player and all of that, right? But you remember, it happened to be in 2011. He came under scrutiny for a test. He failed a testosterone test in 2011,
That's right.
He was in 2012. He was found to have a connection to the Biogenesis of America clinic that provided performance enhancing drugs to he and other professional baseball players, right?
Right.
But this clown, right? You remember he made accusations of anti-Semitism by the testing facility employee administering one of the urine tests in 2011, tried to get the dude fired. Now the whole time you took the stuff. You
Right.
you were involved, and you're gonna try to sit there and try to get the brother suspended and all that. The test was dismissed for procedural mishandling of the sample,
Right.
but however, he was suspended 2 years later for his ties to Biogenesis and his disparagement of the employee. Then he subsequently admitted to using PEDs in 2011. So you knew you did it the whole time, and you still tried to say the dude was an anti-Semite, trying to get the dude fired,
Right.
all of that. And then they let you have that one because you whined enough. Then you turn right back around and they look in the Biogenesis files, you all in there, so they still suspended you anyway. Then you say, well, I in fact did it. If I was the employee, I'd have sued him for defamation of character and
Right.
got everything he had. You have to be a total clown.
Right.
Because I don't like that kind of stuff, man.
Right.
And then on top of that, right? You cheating, and you can only get 33 homers, and you cheating.
and it's not like you playing in like Comerica Park or in San Diego, where it's notoriously difficult to hit home runs. You're playing in Miller Park.
Oh, Barry Bonds allegedly cheated. Man, the dude had 33 by Memorial Day, man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you're playing, and like me, I am a baseball stadium connoisseur. You know that. I love baseball stadiums, and I'm fascinated by them. Miller Park is a notorious home run park, notoriously, because of how it's constructed, okay? It's a retractable roof stadium, and it just seemed like you could hit. I've seen guys, I kid you not, retractable, the stadium, Minute Maid Park in Houston and Miller Park in Milwaukee are the only ballparks I have seen in my life where a guy could hit a home run with a broken bat. They'll break the bat and it's gone. Okay?
Yeah.
That's
Wrigley
the only
Field when the wind is blowing out too.
Yeah, but Wrigley Field, that's a different case. That's a totally different case because it's in Chicago, north side, the wind's right there. The lake is not too far away. That's, that's a special case. But you're playing in Miller Park, you're cheating, and you only hit 33 home runs, I don't know.
And you're going to lie on the guy.
Yeah.
When you knew you were doing it the entire time. And it's like, man, you cannot throw things out there like racism allegations, anti-Semitic at that, which which can get you messed up.
Yes.
You can lose your shirt. You can lose your shirt being an anti-Semite, man. And you're gonna do that and go all the way with it, and then turn around after it's all over with. Well, yeah, I actually did do it. And all, man, you're a sucker. He's a sucker, man, all day. I don't like him. He'll sucker, man. But I don't like stuff like that, bro. Just not, even if you don't own up to what you did and try to cover it up, man, don't throw someone else under the bus, man. Don't do that. So that's my rant on him.
Okay. Looking at the standings, okay. The Phillies, only team in baseball that year to win over 100 games. They finished 102-60. Okay. Braves finished second, 89-73. The Nationals finished third, 80-81. Mets, 77-85, 25 games out of first. And my Marlins, 72-90, 30 games out of first. Okay. In the Central, the Brewers, the aforementioned Brewers, they win the division. 96-69, followed by the Cardinals, 90-72. We're going to get to them in a second. Reds, 79-83, 17 games out of first. Then the Pirates, 72-90, Cubs, sorry, Chuck, 72 and 91, 25 games out of first. But the Astros bringing up not only the rear of the division, but the rear of the National League, 56 and 106 in 2011.
That's nearly impossible to do.
Right. The Diamondbacks win the division in the National League West, 94 and 68. Then the Giants, 86 and 76 are defending World Series champs. Dodgers 82 and 79, 11 and a half games out of first, even with the exploits of Matt Kemp and Andre Ethier and Clayton Kershaw. The Rockies 73 and 89, 21 games out of first, and the Padres 71 and 91, 23 games out of first. Now, the St. Louis Cardinals in this season was pretty much middle of the road. I could never, and now maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, Charles, but can you ever remember a time when the Cardinals were just a bad team?
Never, because like I told you, you remember when we did our favorite cities episode, right? They're kind of like the Steeler versions of the Pittsburgh Steeler version of Major League Baseball. They just always had a great organization, and even though they're the enemy, they're the sworn enemy since I'm a Cub fan, but you have to give credit where they're due. They, in my experience, just my experience now, they have always had the most knowledgeable fans in baseball.
They have.
They just know baseball in and out. They know, and then due to said knowledge, they can appreciate good baseball. And if you're there, since they got a good organization, you have to be able to play good baseball, solid baseball, smart baseball, and most importantly, high effort baseball.
Right.
Because they know the game, and if you're dogging it, they know. They know. And they will let it be known because they know the game. And so I've just never remembered in my entire lifetime the Cardinals being futile. Never.
I mean, like every team goes through ups and downs. One set of years they're like 500, maybe a little bit above 500 or whatever, and then go forward like 5 or 6 more years, and they're below 500. They're towards the bottom of the standings, and then it goes up and down. It's cyclical, for a lot of teams. For the Cardinals, however, the worst that I could ever remember them being is like maybe a little bit under 500. And that's it. Maybe 2 or 3 games under 500 when the season ends. You never see them with, 90 losses.
No.
You don't ever see that. And the reason why is just like you said, it's like the Steelers. You've never known the Steelers to be like god awful. Even in the late years of Chuck Noll in the 90s, the Steelers were decent. They wasn't like a perennial playoff team. They wasn't, going to make the playoffs. But on any given Sunday, they could beat you or whatever. And if they're not going to be like, oh, this team is garbage. You never said that about the Steelers, and you certainly could never say that about the Cardinals. And I've been watching baseball again since 1980, and even before that in the 70s. Even though the Cardinals were not going to the World Series out of the National League, because in the 70s, let's just face it, nobody was beating the Big Red Machine. But, but the Cardinals, was always decent, And this year, no different. They didn't set the world on fire as far as like the 2011 season. They really didn't. They just hung around and hung around and hung around. And then we're going to talk about this in a second. They were always one of those teams that just hung around, and then when the opportunity came, they not only went through the door, they broke it down.
Yeah, but they just always have the ability, and you never see them really make these humongous market-setting free agent contracts.
No, you never see that. You're right.
Like the A-Rod deal, the Bryce Harper deal a few years ago, the Ohtani deal. They never do that. They just always stick to their guns. They know exactly what they want. They always have a firmly established professional culture. They're going to do things the right way in terms of not only the way they play, but the way in which their team constructed. And then they just have always been so astute at making additions, like, for example, like on this team, they had Corey Patterson on this team. Like, he was at the top of the Cubs farm system. Cubs brought him in, thought he would be a corner piece to everyday player to complement Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood at the time. And he had his moments here and there, but by and large, he was kind of a tweener, a fast guy. He was a very fast guy with a long swing. He could give you some power, but usually that's going to come to the detriment of contact. But then the Cardinals, they'll bring him in. Okay, we just play your spot duty instead of you being responsible for all of this every day. We just need you to do this little bit here.
Right.
And that's much more manageable. And they've just always been just very, very good at shopping off the discount rack, man, and just getting players to buy in and putting players in position where they can most succeed.
Okay. Cardinals this year, 2011, this was Tony La Russa's final year as manager of the Cardinals in 2011. And I was like, that's right. It was his final year, and because you think of Tony La Russa, I remember him back when he was the manager of the White Sox in the early 80s.
I remember that too.
And
Harold Baines.
And with Harold Baines and Carlton Fisk and,
Ivan Calderon
and Ozzie Guillen, those guys, and then came up with the A's, and then with the Cardinals, second manager in baseball history to win the World Series in the National League and the American League. The only other two was Sparky Anderson and then later Bruce Bochy. Cardinals dealt with injuries to start the season and hitting slump out Albert Pujols. Okay, and slumps by the bullpen. They gave up in the early part of the year. They gave up a lot of runs. The bullpen was a big time struggle in the early part of the year, but the Cardinals rebounded in May, going 17-12 in that month, and they finished 2.5 games ahead of the Brewers at the end of May. Then La Russa misses games because he had shingles. I remember that. That was like a big deal because he missed 6 games because of a severe case of the shingles. Okay.
Wow.
During that time, also, Pujols breaks out of his slump. Hits 5 home runs in the first 2 weeks of June. Okay. But suffered a broken wrist on June 19th. Okay. So he's out. So he misses a good part of the regular season. Okay. But they held on, and then after 81 games, the Cardinals are just 1 game behind the first place Brewers, in the standings with 43-38. Then the last month of the season happens. The Cardinals catch fire. They win 16 games to tie the Braves heading into the final game of the regular season. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but just to give you a little overview, Cardinals ended up winning, getting the last wild card spot by beating the last place Astros. Meanwhile, the Braves had to win later that night against the Philadelphia Phillies, which they didn't have anything to play for because they had already clinched the number 1 seed. They had nothing to play for, and we're going to tell you what happened in that game. So, Cardinals this year, once again, they do just enough to get into the playoffs. And then when you get into the playoffs, it doesn't matter what year it is, the Cardinals in the National League playoffs are always dangerous.
Yes, sir. And then, and it's always been, they had like a big time starting pitcher at that time that could just, they just had a couple of big time pitchers.
Yeah.
If I remember, was Holiday with them yet? Or was he still in Philly? Okay. Well, they had 2 pitchers at the top of the rotation. Rest in peace, Roy Holiday. But,
No, Roy Halladay that year was with the Phillies. He was still with the Phillies.
Okay. But even then they had Chris Carpenter. He could just come into a road park or must win game, and he just could deal, man. He could just, when the chips were down, he was a good pitcher. He was a very good pitcher in general. But it just seems like whenever the playoffs came, he always just upped his level. And it just like he just dealt, man. Because he could just deal. And like we mentioned before, like a lot of these pitchers, they would give you're like, well, he go into the game. If he can give us 5 innings, then we can piece it together on the back end. Chris was a guy like, man, kind of. No, now I'm not saying he's Jack Morris, but I'm saying he's Jack Morris light. Just give me the ball.
Ain't nobody like Jack Morris. I'm sorry.
No.
He's nobody like Jack Morris.
Just give me the ball. I make it happen. If you play solid defense behind me, and I retire some batters, and I'll get us some outs, man. And then then also like Cardinals, like usual, right? The way they do things, like we were talking about earlier, how the intriguing part of seeing American League pitchers play in the National League and World Series. What the Cardinals pitchers always did, they get up to the plate. They knew how to help their own calls by either they'll come up with a timely hit, or if need be, they'll get that bunt down to move their runner over to possibly get him home and all of that. They just didn't make those type of mistakes and typically didn't beat themselves.
So we go to September. Okay, and both the National League and the American League had very interesting wild card races heading into the final month of the season. Let's start with the National League. Okay. In the National League, the wild card on September 2nd, this was the standings. The Braves was 81-56. The Cardinals in second place, 8.5 games behind the Braves for the final wild card spot on September the 2nd, which is essentially Labor Day weekend. Okay. Giants third place, still tied with the Cardinals. Both of those teams, 8.5 games out of first. Braves, they cruising along. They're doing what they do. Then all of a sudden, the wheels start to fall off. Braves lose 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers to start the month. Then after winning 2 games against the Mets, they get swept by those Cardinals. Okay.
Now there, right? It's even worse than that, right?
Right.
They went into that Cardinal series. They were still up 7.5.
Right.
They were up 3-1 in the bottom of the ninth of the series opener. They were up 3-1 in the bottom of the ninth. And the aforementioned rookie of the year, Craig Kimbrell, he hadn't blown a save since like May or something. Right. And Pujols had a hit off Kimbrell to tie the game and all of that, and tie the game in the ninth. And then the Cardinals walked off in the bottom of the 10th. They walked off, and then obviously that set the tone for the whole series. They promptly dropped the next 2 games to get swept in St. Louis. But even then, they're up 4.5 with 15 to play. You think it's all right? Then
you think so? Alternating wins and losses. They beat the Nationals on September the 23rd, 7-4. That win against the Nationals on September 23rd, that was their last win of the season. They would finish the year on a 5-game losing streak. Meanwhile, the Cardinals caught fire. They win 16 games in the month of September. On the final day of the regular season, the Cardinals and Braves are tied. Okay. The Braves lose to the Phillies in 13 innings. Again, Phillies, they have nothing to play for. They already got not only in the playoff, they're the number 1 seed in the National League. What they playing for? Half of their players are probably on the bench resting. There's probably reserves and minor league guys that they called up for a cup of coffee. Okay. The Braves, who's tonight's pitcher? Johnny Holstaff. Everybody's on deck. Everybody's available. Right? Mm-hmm. What happened? They blow the game in 13 innings. They lose the wild card. Okay. They beat the Astros 8-0 for the final wild card game. Cardinals win 16 games in the month of September to claim the last wild card spot. Braves, done. And people still talk about that 2011 collapse here in Atlanta. They still do. But then again, once again, I made this joke at a barbecue once. And I think I told you this before. I made a joke once at a barbecue. And I asked a guy who was a big Atlanta sports fan and kept going on and on and on about Atlanta sports teams. I said, and I got tired of it. I said, do you know what the word Atlanta means? It's an old Cherokee Indian word that means blown lead.
Blue?
He didn't appreciate that too much. Because you talk about the Falcons, you talk about the Braves, they blow leads more than anything. And this is a classic example of that.
Well, quick question for you. Just devil's advocate, perhaps. You mentioned that the Phillies had nothing to play for, and by then, realignment had occurred, so they were in the same division by then. Do you think that they, even though they didn't have anything to play for, like a lot of times these teams sometimes do the possible matchups, because usually, in divisions,
I see what you're saying.
Teams construct their rosters to deal with their division counterparts, so they usually know how to play them due to familiarity and the vision of building the team. Because obviously the Phillies were the best team, so you would have to build your team to beat the Phillies. Do you think they went ahead and was like, okay, let's get the Braves out of here so we don't have to deal with them in the playoffs for whatever reason? Because they usually have pretty good starting pitching and so forth and all of that. And I'm just speculating.
Well, I think what it was also was the fact that whenever you're in the position that they were in when the series, when they pretty much was on this collapse, they were talking about this collapse like every day in the last couple of months of the season, in the last couple of weeks of the season. They were talking about this every day. And when you're in a position like that, when you have the Cardinals behind you, breathing down your neck, you lose, they win. You lose, they win. So they catching up with you on the standings. I really think that the pressure started to get to them as far as like, oh my God, and then they started to press. Okay. I think that what you're talking about is that they might have been trying to set their lineup for whatever. I just think that it's more along the lines of what happened with the Braves was that they just they heard the footsteps behind them during the last couple of weeks of the regular season, and they panicked. Okay. And they tried to win games and try to get back. And I think they just hit like had the worst possible time to have it go into a slump. Okay. And then plus the added pressure of them trying to hold off the Cardinals, which was red hot at that time. So I think all of that kind of played into that.
Okay. Got it. Cool.
Now over in the American League, this was really fun. Because I remember this was actually really fun. Go back to September 2nd, just like I did with the National League. And on September the 2nd, the Boston Red Sox had a 9-game lead in the wild card over the division rival, the Tampa Bay Rays. Also in the mix was the Anaheim Angels, with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is a stupid name, by the way. I'd rather the LA Angels, but anyway.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. The Angels 74 and 64. They were 9.5 games out. So they kind of like in the hunt, but it's September. Both teams are kind of like out of it in a way. The Red Sox, they go in that month, they go 7-20 in the final month of the season. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay catches fire, winning 16 games in September, just like the Cardinals did, to catch the Red Sox to tie them in the wild card with 1 game remaining on the schedule. September 28th, the Yankees played the Rays while Baltimore played the Red Sox, with enormous playoff implications on that final night of the regular season. And it was that night because both games took place at night. Okay, so the situation was this. If the Red Sox win, Tampa Bay loses, Red Sox are in. If Tampa Bay wins and the Red Sox lose, Tampa Bay's in. But if both teams win or both teams lose, then there's a 1-game playoff the next day, game 163. Okay, so that's what's on the line, okay? The Rays are playing the Yankees in Tampa Bay to end the season. Yankees, again, they have nothing to play for. the situation, they already got the number one seed in the American League. A lot of their players are getting rest, getting ready for the postseason. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, they made this serious run. They're kind of hot. They playing for the season right here for this one game. On the other side, you got the Red Sox, similar situation. They're in it. They have to win tonight against the last place Orioles. Okay, who would love nothing more than to ruin the Red Sox season? So that was the situation going into that night, September 28th, the last game of the regular season.
It gets even worse. Well, I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you talk about that final game. But like about a week and a half before, they lost 3 out of 4 to Baltimore and Fenway, like in a week and a half before that.
Right.
So I think they need to check some bank accounts because, like right now in the NBA, you got a lot of point shaving going on. And because you went through the standings and Baltimore was the worst team in the East. In the East by a landslide, and you lose 3 out of 4 at home, and then
to the last place team in the division,
and leading to this game, basically the rubber match of the final series because you split the previous 2 games of the series, and then you need this one to win, and then what?
Okay, so both games start at 7:00 Eastern time. Okay, start with the Yankees first. Okay. Yankees get off to a big lead against Tampa Bay. Okay, after scoring a run in the first, Mark Teixeira hits a grand slam to make the score 5-0 in the top of the second. Okay, so right now the Yankees are cruising, and the Rays are like, oh my God, we made this big run, and of course the Yankees are going to ruin it for us as they always do. Okay, Yankees will score runs in the 4th and 5th inning to go up 7-0. However, in the 8th, the Rays would rally, scoring 6 runs, including an Evan Longoria 3-run home run to go up 1 run, to get within one run, 7-6. Then after scoreless, top of the 9th, down to their final at bat, the Rays bring in first baseman Dan Johnson off the bench, had not hit a home run since April.
Dangerous Dan Johnson.
Dan Johnson comes up, hadn't hit a home run since April. Okay, the last month of the season, hits a solo home run to right field that curves around the foul pole to go off for a solo home run to tie the game at 7 at the bottom of the 9th inning. Then stays that way till the 12th inning. Bottom of the 12th, Evan Longoria hits a walk-off home run on a line drive. And I went back and watched this game. Chuck, when he hits the home run, I don't think the ball goes about 30 feet in the air. It's a line drive. It was a rope. You could hang clothes on that. It was such of a rope down the left field line, and it just barely goes over the fence for a home run in that short corner at Tropicana Field. So they win the game 8-7. Okay. So now it depends on what the Red Sox do in Baltimore. Meanwhile, Boston had gone up 3-2 in the 7th inning when the game was, of course, delayed by rain. Now, I will get in this. Stay tuned for the record. This is part of it, okay? During the rain delay, Dan Shaughnessy, sports writer for the Boston Globe, wrote a number of books, including The Curse of the Bambino book. He proclaimed, quote, I think the Rays are not going to win tonight. I think the one thing we have eliminated is that the Red Sox season is not going to end tonight. They live to play another day. As he was making this statement, right, the Tampa Bay walked in a run to make the game 7-1. Okay, so as he's saying this, we got this in the bag. It's okay. The Rays doesn't look like they're going to win tonight. As he's saying this, the Rays begin their rally. Okay, we go to the bottom of the 9th. The Red Sox Going into the bottom of the ninth inning in 2011, you see these stats all the time. That year, the Red Sox were 77-0 when leading after 8 innings. So they feel like they got this in the bag. Jonathan Papelbon is on the mound for Boston. He gives up back-to-back doubles to Chris Davis and Nolan Reimold. Okay, with 2 outs to tie the game. Okay, then Robert Andino hits a line drive to left field, scoring Reimold to win in a walk-off, 8-7, ending the Red Sox season in Baltimore at Camden Yards. During the post-game interview, Robert Andino said, quote, "To end the season like this, to make Boston go home sad, crying, I'll take it all day." So that's what happened. The Rays rally against the New York Yankees in the late innings at home. They win an extra inning, 2 dramatic home runs for the Rays. Meanwhile, thanks to a rain delay, the Orioles come back 3-2. They were down 3-2. They come back and ended up beating Jonathan Papelbon, one of the best closers in baseball that year, beating the Red Sox and eliminated them from playoff contention.
Well, I don't think the Yankees were too hurt about sticking it to the Red Sox, though. I mean, they probably didn't want to lose the game. They didn't need the game anyway because they had the best record. But well, looked like they needed it because they finished 1 game up. But anyway, it was like, we stick it to the Bo Sox. Who cares? You know. So yeah.
Tom Verducci said afterwards, "This was the most exciting 128 minutes in baseball history." Okay, because I went back and watched this on YouTube and they did like a timeline. What happened at this particular minute, this happened at this particular minute, what happened at this particular minute. It was crazy, because all of this, both games ended pretty much within 20 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. It was one of those times at the end of baseball seasons. A lot of people talk about the 1-game playoff in 1951 between the Giants and Dodgers and Bobby Thompson's home run and stuff like that, which was really cool. That was the last game of the regular season. The Bucky Dent home run, with the Yankees in 78. That was on the last day of the regular season. It was like a playoff game, but it's still considered the last game of the regular season. You see this every now and then in baseball, and I think that what adds to the magic of the game, and I think that, with all of this, all of that takes place in baseball, you really don't, it's really not publicized, I should say, as it should be, in my opinion.
You're right. And it's just like, just kind of crazy how a 162 game marathon can literally come down to the final day of the season. That's just
come down to 2 hours, pretty much. It comes down to 2 hours.
And I don't know if this was by design or just circumstance. It was really cool that both games were going on simultaneously and concurrently, because I know that's something that the NFL eventually adopted because,
right.
For the longest time it would be, 2 teams were vying for something. One team would know the result before they even hit the field, whether or not they had to win or not, which is something that I think, and I agree with, the NFL is kind of modified and like they flex those games all to the same time. So, no one can kind of relax a little bit and all of that. So that's just crazy.
And you notice that in the NFL, there's no Sunday night game. Which you're alluding to. There is no Sunday night game on the last game of the regular season. Everybody plays that afternoon.
Yeah, got to play your way in.
And it is also cool that the NFL had adopted like either the last 2 games or the last game for sure, but I think it's the last 2 games where you play your division rival.
They do. Yes.
You have to play your division rival in the last 2 games of the regular season, or at least the last game for sure.
Yes.
So in the American League playoffs, these are the matchups. You have the Yankees facing Detroit, and you have the Rangers playing the Rays. Over in the National League, you have the Phillies taking on the Cardinals and the Brewers taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, I'm just going to go through who won which series or whatever. If there's anything you want to add to that series, just let me know.
Okay.
In the American League, the Yankees defeat the Tigers 3-2. Okay. Justin Verlander, he won the MVP. He played pretty well, but the team just didn't, the team came up short against the New York Yankees. So the Yankees are in the National League. So the Yankees beat the Tigers. Oh, I must have had that wrong because I got the Tigers. The Tigers won that series.
Yeah, Tigers won
that's
in
what
5.
I thought. Tigers won in 5.
Yes.
I wrote it down wrong.
No, that's okay.
Then the Rangers defeat the Rays 3-1. Okay,
Yes.
so the Rays, the magic kind of ran out, and they're playing against a very good Texas Rangers team, the defending American League champs. Over in the National League, the Cardinals defeat the Phillies 3-2, and the Milwaukee Brewers beat the Arizona Diamondbacks also 3-2. So you have the National League Championship Series, Brewers and the Cardinals. Brewers in the National League Championship Series for the first time in franchise history. Now, the Brewers were in the World Series in '82, but they were part of the American League back then.
Yes.
So they were in the ALCS in 1982, but this is the National League Championship Series, which I never really understood, right? If you're going to have the Brewers, which was in the American League, join the National League, why did the Astros move from the National League to the American League?
I'm trying to remember why. I'm trying to remember.
Because I was like, okay, if you had, I understand that maybe it has something to do with in '93, you had 2 expansion teams. You had the Marlins. The Marlins and the Rockies both joined the National League.
Yeah.
So they had that imbalance.
Yeah.
Right. It was like maybe an imbalance.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, the Brewers came into the National League after that, didn't they?
They came after that. I'm trying to think.
Like in the early 2000s or like the late 90s, they joined the National League.
When did
No,
so when did the D-backs get in?
99. They joined with the Rays in 99.
So maybe it has
in 98. I'm saying in 98.
Well, that was 1 each, so they would still been even, right? So
right.
something happened.
It was something weird about that.
They say the shift was largely driven by the need for balance in the MLB as it welcomed new teams. By moving the Brewers to the NL, MLB aimed to ensure that each league maintained an even number of teams, facilitating fair competition and scheduling. So, so
and I think the Astros moved to the American League because they had more teams in the National League than they had in the American League, and then plus you had the fact that they wanted to cultivate that rivalry between the Astros and Rangers.
Mm-hmm. But then they also said that the Brewers' move was also rooted in their historical context. Milwaukee had previously been associated with the National League because of the Milwaukee Braves.
Right. Okay.
So that's why.
Okay. So in the American League Championship Series, the Texas Rangers defeat the Tigers 4-2. Nelson Cruz, outfielder for the Rangers, was named series most valuable player. They win that series in 6. In the National League, the Cardinals defeat the Brewers also in 6 games. David Freese is series MVP. Remember that name. Brewers, again, first appearance ever in the National League Championship Series. So you have the World Series. The St. Louis Cardinals against the Texas Rangers. Cardinals looking to win their 11th World Series title. Texas in the World Series for the 2nd straight year, looking to win their first ever World Series. And for those who don't know the whole story with the Texas Rangers, they used to be the Washington Senators, but not the original Washington Senators. See, you have the original Washington Senators who started in 1903, which you now know of now as the Minnesota Twins. When the American League expanded in the early 1960s, they placed another team in Washington and renamed them the Senators. But because they needed to fill the brand new DC Stadium, which of course you now know of as RFK Stadium. By 1971, attendance was bad for the Senators, so they decided to move to Arlington, and they were renamed the Rangers, playing in old Arlington Stadium, aka the Frying Pan, because A, how it looked, and B, playing in the North Texas heat in the summer is not good. Okay. And plus, they had the coolest looking scoreboard ever. The scoreboard was in the shape of the state of Texas. That was pretty cool. So, and that was when the infamous fight between Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura. Yeah.
Bet you he never did that again. Now, if I may touch upon the ALCS right quick.
Go ahead.
Just as I mentioned earlier, the disparity in Verlander's postseason success versus his regular season, he wound up going 2-1 in the playoffs, but ERA jumped up nearly 3 runs to 5.31 in the playoffs.
Wow.
So huge swing in effectiveness.
So we got the National League had home field advantage for winning the All-Star game in July, which to me, and before we go any further, I have to make this point. Whoever came up with the idea of whoever wins the All-Star game hosting the league that wins the All-Star game to host it, to host the World Series, is one of the stupidest decisions I've ever heard in baseball. It may be in any sport. So you're going to determine who will host the World Series based on, if you see in most All-Star games, guys that deciding the game, if it's close, are guys that are playing for teams that have no shot of making the playoffs.
Correct.
For the most part. You never, and I will talk about this also in my rant as one of baseball's continuing asinine traditions of overreacting for something that's good, something that's good, and thinking that it's bad, when it's actually good. Okay, and then they overreact and change it, and they had no reason to change it. Here's an idea to determine who has home field or World Series. Oh, why not award it to the team that finished the best record? That seems easy enough. It works in every other league. Why not this one? That's what I was thinking.
That though, they used to schedule the games. They used to schedule.
Yeah, it used to be
who would host them. They used to alternate.
It used to alternate, right? Odd number years, it was the American League. Even number years, it was the National League, or something, or vice versa, or something like that. Yeah. So it was like that, and then they decided, because the NFL did that for years. The NFL had did that all through the 70s. Okay, that, like the famous case was the Dolphins that finished undefeated in 72, had to play the AFC Championship game at Three Rivers. So that was crazy. Okay, so we got the World Series. St. Louis, Texas defending American League champs. If I'm not mistaken, they were favored to win the series. They were favored to win the series. So we were thinking, okay, this could be the year the Rangers finally win the World Series. This team that came out of nowhere, they played in the World Series last year, so now they get their shot, against a wild card team in the Cardinals. But of course, as we talked about earlier, the Cardinals are a very, very dangerous team, especially in the postseason.
Always.
Game 1, Cardinals beat the Rangers 3-2. Chris Carpenter, gets the win for the Cardinals, as their ace, the number 1, gets the win 3-2. Game 2, Rangers even the series by winning 2-0. Cardinals had a 1-0 lead in the 9th and had a chance to go up 2-0. Then Ian Kinsler singled, then Stoll second. Elvin Andrews singled. Kinsler moved to third. So you had runners at second and third after an Andrews steal, and then runners on second and third. La Russa brought in Arthur Rhodes. And then they sacrifice, and it hits 2 sacrifice flies. Both runners score, and the Rangers win now and 2-1, evening the series, heading to Arlington. Game 3, and Rangers ballpark. And I miss that ballpark. I love that ballpark. I just did.
Talk about the old one?
The old, Arlington State, the ballpark at Arlington.
Okay.
Not the frying pan, the one they played in this. I always did like that ballpark. Okay. Cardinals win now in 16-7, because Arlington ballpark is one of those ballparks that on a good night, you see the balls fly out of there. And case in point was this night here. Albert Pujols, third player in Major League in World Series history to hit 3 home runs in the game, joining Babe Ruth and my boy Reggie Jackson.
It's October, baby.
Game 4, Texas beats the Cardinals. The Rangers beat the Cardinals 4-0 to tie the series at 2. Derek Holland, 8 1/3 innings pitched, gave up only 2 hits. Okay, so now Game 5, last game in Arlington. Texas wins again 4-2. Texas, the Rangers are now up 3-2 with one more, to win one more to win the world champions. Cardinals scored 2 in the second. Then Mitch Moreland comes in with a solo home run in the second inning. Adrian Beltre home run in the 6th. And in the bottom of the 8th, the Rangers scored 2 more runs to take the lead and win 4-2. Rangers head to St. Louis with 1 win away from their first ever World Series title. Then you got Game 6. And I remember watching this game at my brother-in-law's house because we had just moved here from Louisiana and we were watching the game. I really thought, you can never get so close to winning a World Series. You could never get this close and not win it. It's impossible, for what happened in Game 6. Anything you want to add before I describe
I just
Game 6?
it. I remember it being very, very heartbreaking. And then they were making it was in the news at the time that Washington would be the first Black manager to win since Cito Gaston.
Cito Gaston. Yep.
Cito Gaston went back
in
to back
1993.
in the early 90s.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big story arc at the time. And it just seemed like with the Rangers coming up short last year and having the experience of the year before and coming up short, that they would be able to parlay that into hitting pay dirt this time. And they came agonizingly close, but no cigar.
Texas scores. Here we are, Game 6. Texas scores a run in the top of the first. Then in the second inning, Lance Berkman 2-run home run to give the Cardinals a 2-1 lead. In the top of the second, in the top of the next inning, Ian Kinsler gives a ground rule double, scoring Greg Gentry. Okay, the Rangers would score a run in the top of the 4th, and in the top of the 4th inning, the Cardinals would answer in the bottom of the 4th. Rangers would regain the lead 4-3 in the top of the 5th. Then the Cardinals would tie the game in the bottom of the 6th. So we got a back and forth game going here, which looks like it's going to be a very high scoring game. Okay, then we get to the 7th. Back-to-back home runs for the Rangers by Adrian Beltre and Nelson Cruz, and then an RBI single by Ian Kinsler to give the Rangers a 7-4 lead. Now you start to think, okay, they got this big inning here in the 7th. They put up a crooked number in the 7th inning.
We're counting down the outs.
You're starting to count down the outs. Exactly. But then you got the bottom of the 8th inning. The Cardinals come up, Alan Craig solo home run to cut the lead to 7-5. Then in the bottom of the 9th, you got 3 outs to go. They bring in Neftali Feliz to save the game. Feliz was a great, great relief pitcher for the Rangers. Gave them a lot of saves during that regular season. Then in the bottom of the 9th, Albert Pujols doubles. Feliz walks Berkman with placing the time run on first base. Okay, they strike out Alan Craig for the 2nd out of the inning. Okay, now you got the runners on 1st and 2nd, 2 outs. David Freese comes up. They've already, you know the story. They probably got the champagne waiting in the Rangers locker room. They've already got everything already set up for They're three
They
outs
tarped
away.
off the locker rooms. To
Exactly.
Keep the
They got
dry.
everything set up, right? David Freese gets down to his final strike. And then Feliz offers up a pitch. He hits a 2-run triple that bounces off the wall past Nelson Cruz. He has to run after the ball, scoring Pujols and Berkman. And Freese ends up on third. They were one strike away from winning the World Series. Okay. And then they give up a triple to tie the game, and the game-winning run is at third. Yadier Molina's up the bat next, and he flies out to Cruz to end the inning, to send it into extra innings. Now, it's tie game. The Cardinals, by now at this point, you got to be thinking, okay, these guys, they got all the momentum now.
Yes.
And of course, the St. Louis crowd's going absolutely nuts, okay, because they got a reprieve, okay? Top of the 10th inning, Josh Hamilton, 2-run shot to give the Rangers a 9-7 lead. Here we go again.
You got to be like, okay, they got
it now. They got it now.
Most of the time, something like that happens, and then your offense immediately responds to like, no, we're winning tonight. You got to figure, okay, that's it. That's it. We got it now. You have to figure that.
Yeah, and of course, watching this, looking back on it, and watching this game, I'm like, oh, when I saw Josh Hamilton hit that home run, I'm like, oh, bruh, that's a dagger. That's a dagger. You don't make a run like that to come back you down to your final strike, and then the next half inning, you give up a 2-run bomb.
Yes, sir.
And that had to be deflating. But we're talking about the Cardinals here. Bottom of the 10th, Daniel Descalso and John Jay hit back-to-back singles. And after a bunt by pitcher Kyle Loesch moves the runners over. An RBI ground out by Ryan Theriot scores Descalso to make the score 9-8.
We don't care about that.
Okay, that's fine. Then after an intentional walk to Pujols, Lance Berkman singles in Jay to tie the game at 9 apiece. That marked the first time in World Series history that a team overcame two-run deficits in the 9th inning or later. That had never happened before. You're thinking to yourself, these Cardinals just don't die. It
took their heart from them.
In the 11th inning, the Rangers go down 1-2-3. David Freese leads off the bottom of the 11th. Facing a 3-2 pitch, he hits a home run deep into the center field, into the batter's eye in center field, into that little grassy area right behind the center field fence to win the game, to win the game and to force a Game 7, tying the series at 3 games apiece. When you lose a game like that, when you're so close, you're thinking to yourself, we may be going into Red Sox territory here as far as like being cursed.
It's academic for sure.
Yeah, because you're so close, and you could actually feel the World Series trophy in your hand. Okay, and it just snatched away at the last second. But that was one hell of a game.
Yeah, but you got to figure it's academic after that, because when you lose like that, and then they promptly came back in the 11th and gave up the winning run, in all probability, they're going to have nothing to offer for Game 7. It's basically academic.
It kind of reminded me not to this extent or to this extreme, but I remember thinking back to Byung-Hyun Kim of the Diamondbacks in the 2001 World Series, where he anointed Derek Jeter as Mr. November. Mm-hmm. Not only did it happen once, but it happened twice to him. Now, granted, the Diamondbacks would end up winning the World Series eventually in 7 games, but you kind of felt that like, oh my God, the Rangers were this close. And it wasn't nothing that they did necessarily wrong. per se, because you could always in games like that, you could always point out to like, well, this would have happened, or if this wouldn't have happened, then this would have been different. No, it was just the Cardinals was just really good and came up with a big play when they needed it.
Well, I would say like in that bottom of the ninth inning, you have to force people to earn their way on base. You can't walk people and just like they walked one guy and then that brought the tying run to first base. You can't do that. You can't do that. And then like in the case of the D-backs, at least as disheartening as that was, they had perhaps the two best overall starting pitchers at the time in baseball on the exact same team. Right. So you got two big time horses at the top of the rotation. So with their abilities, you can always there's a possibility that you can always overcome that. Whereas in this case, the Rangers did not have that. And to compound matters, now you got to go to Game 7 and you got to play a team that has that guy in Chris Carpenter.
Now, for the Rangers, it looked good in the beginning. They scored 2 in the top of the first to take a 2-0 lead in the top of the first. So they was like, okay, what happened last night, that happened last night. But we we still got one game to play. They got to beat us, okay? And they take a 2-0 lead in the top of the first. Then the Cardinals tied with a 2-run double by David Freese, who would end up being the World Series MVP. He was setting the record with the new postseason RBI record. Ties the game 2-2. Then Alan Craig comes up and hits a go-ahead home run in the third, and the Cardinals would not look back after that. In the fifth, the Cardinals scored 2 runs to take a 5-2 lead, and add another run in the seventh to make it a 6-2. And then end up winning the game 6-2 and end up winning the World Series in 7 games, making them the last team to win a Game 7 at home in the World Series, which I find that's like, wow, that's hard to believe, but it's true. All the other ones that I listed earlier in the show, all the ones after this, the team that won the World Series won the Game 7 on the road, which is like a crazy streak. So that is the 2011 season. It came down to one of the wildest postseason runs and then one of the even wilder World Series.
It's got to be crazy to be that close, especially after the previous season. And, you probably had redemption and finishing the job on, which fueled the entire season this time. And it looked like it was going to happen. And to get 1 strike away or 1 out away twice, right, and wind up not happening. And I know eventually attrition begins to set in. You start running to that top of that mountain, and then you don't hit pay dirt. Then you have to run up it again, and you don't hit pay dirt and start at the bottom of the mountain again. It's hard to summon up the energy and the resolve to make yet another run with the same exact guys. So usually that signals that as far as with that particular group, it may eventually happen in franchise history, but with that current rendition and that current group, that's going to be it.
Now they would eventually win the World Series. The Rangers would eventually win the World Series, I think in 2024 it was, against the Phillies. No, against the Diamondbacks, excuse me. They beat the Diamondbacks in 2024, I believe. 23 or 24. Yeah. It took
a foregone memory. Yeah. All of the players that were on that team, long gone.
Bochy, they were all long gone. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a quick break, and that was the 2011 Major League Baseball season. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. I have a few choice words for a couple of fan bases out there, so please stay tuned for that. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. And we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, a member of the Sports History Network. I'm Dana Augusta along with Charles Combs, and we've just got through describing the 2011 baseball season. And one of the major events that happened during the Major League Baseball season of 2011, and not so much as the teams that won, but also what marked this season as sort of unique in baseball history was the teams that lost. More specifically, two epic collapses by the Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves. And one thing about that I've learned over the years, and I've come to pretty much notice over the years of certain fan bases, that they have a tendency to decide not to point blame into different places where it should be blamed. Now, let's talk about the Red Sox for a second. The Red Sox lost in 2011 18 of their last 24 games and had a 9-game lead in the wild card in September the 1st. Okay. No team had ever lost a 9-game lead for the wild card. Ever. That has never happened. Now, after the season ended, okay, some stories broke about the Red Sox saying that starting pitchers John Lester, Josh Beckett, and John Lackey had been eating fried chicken, playing video games, and drinking beer in the clubhouse during games when not pitching. Now, I remember this story broke not too long before the World Series, that a lot of people were kind of like miffed at that, okay? And I kind of was too, but Charles, you and I talked about this, and you made me think about something, and you made a good point. When you're a baseball pitcher, you only pitch maybe once a week. So there's 162 games in a regular season, and you only pitch like once a week or whatever. So there's a lot of downtime when the team is out there playing and you don't have anything to do. Okay. And then when you start getting into August and September, and you've been around these guys since March, since spring training, it gets a little boring, so you needed a distraction, okay? So that was their distraction, okay? Do I think it's right? Who am I to say? Okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But you never hear about it if you win. You know what I mean? You never hear about it when you win. In this case, they didn't win. They had a loss. So what did the fans do? As all Boston Red Sox have done for over a century, they find something to blame. So this is what they blamed for this year. The three pitchers they call it the fried chicken and beer controversy in Boston, which I think is BS.
Okay. Now, thinking about this, I've kind of had an about face on this a little bit.
Really?
Who were the pitchers again? It was John Lackey, Lester,
Josh Beckett, former Marlin, Josh Beckett, and John Lester.
Okay. I've had an about face on this a little bit because I know now I'm not as familiar with baseball modern era, but now I know back in the days when we really came up in the 80s and the 90s, it was typical practice at that time that the starter for the next game would chart the pitches for today's game.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming I don't know.
They probably got a guy doing that now.
With technological advancements, I'm assuming
they probably got a guy that does that.
Anymore.
It is a practice, but it's probably done automatically, or some guys hired to do that to track pitches, like a analytics guy or something like that. It's not done by anybody in the staff.
Okay.
You wouldn't think.
But now this is where my pushback comes in at, right? Because they had a 9-game lead and blew it in 1 month. During this stretch, let's look at it. Lackey lost 1, 2. Lackey lost 2 starts in that time.
Right.
Let's see. Lester. Let's see how many he lost. Oh, let's see. Lester. He lost 1. He lost 2. He lost 3 starts in that time frame.
Right.
Let's see how many Beckett lost. Beckett lost. Let's see, Josh Beckett. He lost 1. He lost 2 starts. So that is a total of 7 games. That's 7 games.
7 games.
And my whole thing is like, okay, now if you were winning your starts and you still was in there eating chicken and all that and they lost, hey man, I ain't got no problem with you. Man, them dudes sad, man. Like, man, you think I'm gonna sit out there in the cold in October and watch them scrubs? You got another thing coming. But when you lost 7 combined starts between the 3 of them, perhaps y'all need to be in the dugout so y'all can study your oppositions. So,
right.
And I'm trying to see, did they win any starts? I'm looking, okay, Beckett won 1. Let me see. Lester nor Lackey. Lester won 1. Lackey didn't win any. Oh no! Oh no! You didn't win a start in the whole month, and you got the nerves to be playing video games? Absolutely not. No.
Right.
No.
But
now,
and you got a point there. You have a point, but at the same time, you got to produce. You have to produce. To your point, you have to produce when you're up there. If you're going to do that, you got to produce. Okay.
Like, he come in a little late, but man, he my top salesman. Okay, man, just don't start charting the clock until he get here. So technically not late. Be the top salesman, but you
right.
The last salesman, man. You better be 10 minutes early, man. That's all I gotta say.
So I mean, and the point that I was making was is that the Red Sox fans now in this case it may be justified, maybe
a little.
Okay, maybe justified. Okay, but for a century, for almost a century, for 88 years for sure, they have been talking about the curse of the Bambino. Every major loss that the Red Sox have ever had in their entire history between 1919 and 2004, they had to blame it on something. It's not our fault. It's the curse of the Bambino, which I think is BS. Okay, but a lot of it was just basically either luck, which you talked about earlier, mostly bad. Okay, but you never hear the Cubs blaming everything on the Billy Goat. You never hear that. You hear it every now and then that's brought up, but for the most part, the curse of the Bambino became basically a member of the team. You know what I mean? Yeah. So look at this. 1946, they lose to the Cardinals in Game 7. Enos Slaughter scores from first base on a double. Okay, in the Game 7, how do you score from first base? On a hit and run. Okay, which the outfielder lost it in the sun. Plus, that was the year of the infamous Ted Williams shift, where they shifted the whole team to right field and left a huge gap in left field. And he batted like 200 in the series. Why don't you just
the ball?
Why don't you
inside
just
out it?
Yeah, that's all. Just hit it inside out and make him go back to playing straight up. He didn't do that because he gonna get his hits on his terms. That's why you hit 200. Okay, but that's the curse of the Bambino, dog. 1967, they played the Cardinals in the World Series again. Okay, the Red Sox. This was the impossible dream season. They finished last in the American League the year before. They come back, they make the World Series, they win the pennant in 67 in probably the tightest pennant race in American League history. With them, the Tigers, White Sox, and Twins all in contention on the final weekend of the regular season. They're all practically in a tie. Okay, the Red Sox win the World Series. The Red Sox win the pennant. They play the Cardinals in the World Series. What happens? They go up against the Cardinals. And that late 60s Cardinals team, Bob Gibson, Orlando Cepeda, Tim McCarver, Kurt Flood, Mike Shannon. This team was loaded. Okay, Lou Brock. This team was loaded. Not only Bob Gibson throws a complete game in Game 7, but he also hits a home run in the game. Okay, the starting pitcher hits a home run. Bob Gibson hits a home run in the game. But Again, what did they want to do? Well, it was the curse of the Bambino. We had them. They were so confident going up against the Cardinals in '67 is that Thomas Yawkey, the owner of the Red Sox, and the mayor of Boston had already started to plan the World Series victory parade before Game 1. That's how confident they were.
Sound like the clock struck midnight. You said they finished in last place the year before, right?
Right, exactly.
And they had been dancing all night, playing above their heads. And what did we say in a few episodes back? Things like when the Spurs blew the game, they hit all them threes in the first half. Things always revert back to the mean.
Yep. It does. It's a numbers game. It's numbers. Right? 1975. Game 7, this time against Cincinnati. The game before, Game 6, greatest World Series game ever. With Carlton Fisk waving the ball fair. They had a 3-0 lead in Game 7 heading into the 7th inning. They were 8 outs away from winning the World Series against Cincinnati. What happened? Joe Morgan, Ken Griffey Sr., George Foster, Pete Rose. That's what happened. And they ended up losing the World Series in 7. Okay, 1978, Bucky Dent. The last person on the Yankees roster that you would expect to hit a home run to give him the lead, Bucky Dent. Guess what happened? Bucky Dent, home run. 1986, Bill Buckner. Enough said. You already know what happened there. Okay. Then in 2003, Aaron Bleeping Boone.
Correct.
That was just mismanagement by Grady Little. I'm sorry. You don't leave Pedro out there. Pedro was dealing. He just went too long.
He gave you everything he had, and
then you bring in Tim Wakefield, okay, and first pitch, Tim Wakefield throws knuckleball, Aaron Boone deep into the Bronx night, okay. But of course, that was the curse of the Bambino. They had to blame it on somebody. Okay, and that had went on, and even after they won the World Series, which I told a friend of mine and my godfather, the Red Sox winning the World Series in 2004 may have been the worst thing that happened to baseball, because now they want to compare themselves. They have to be in reverential of the Yankees. The Yankees have won 27 World Series. Since you've won 3 since you've got back into the high life, I should say, and one of those was against the Colorado Rockies, one of the World Series champions. It counts. Right, it does count.
But you still about 20-something behind, man.
Right. I mean, my Marlins have won 2 World Series. They've never won a division title, but they've won 2 World Series. I'm sure as hell going to take that. But at the same time, I'm never going to compare them to the New York Yankees. Never.
No.
Then you got the Atlanta Braves, who equally lost. And I will say this as a person who lives in Atlanta, and I see this on a daily basis. The Atlanta Braves fans seem to be the most sanctimonious fan base in baseball. I'm just going to say it. It's like, you see this, and I saw this all the time. Not so much now, because at least the Braves now have personality. With Albies and Acuna, they do have some personality. Okay, not much, but they do have personality. The only problem is that they're always hurt. The Braves, in 1995, they finally win the World Series against the Indians in 6 games. David Justice had to go on radio and badmouth the Braves fans for not showing up to Game 6 of the World Series. Okay, you made the comment, well, I told you about this, was that the Braves had gone to the World Series, lost. This was 1995, okay, a year after the strike. They had been to the World Series in 91 and lost in 7 games, in which I think is the greatest World Series start to finish ever, complete series ever. Okay, they lose to the Blue Jays in 92. They weren't going to beat the Blue Jays in 92. That team was just too good with Paul Molitor, and that bunch, and Joe Carter, and they weren't beating them. Okay. They go to the World Series against the Indians. Indians in the World Series for the first time since 1954. Okay. They were favored. The Braves were favored. And it took David Justice on the radio to tell them, hey, we need y'all to come to the park. Because this is something that doesn't happen every day, which leads to a bigger issue that I have with Braves fans. And I mentioned this in our Best and Worst Cities episode, is that Atlanta fans become so spoiled so fast. You have a couple of years of success, and now all of a sudden you feel as though, okay, we got this. I don't need to show up. But if you have a different city, say, for example, Cleveland, very similar in population, very similar in demographics and stuff like that to Atlanta for a size and population and everything. If the Guardians were to make the World Series 3 times in 4 years, Progressive Field would be packed, like standing room only. It would be packed. Not in Atlanta. No, and David Justice pointed that out. And even in the series, he hits a home run, which was the difference in the game in Game 6, because the Braves won 1-0. David Justice was vilified, and to a point still is in Atlanta, for calling the fans out. You know what I mean? And I don't blame him for that. Somebody had to do it, but he's still vilified here in Atlanta for that, at least to a point. But that's something that Braves fans I've always kind of like, even though I live here in Atlanta and I see it all the time. Braves fans, like, for example, if somebody, especially during this time in 2011, somebody would hit a home run off of a Braves pitcher, and he just happens to stand there and hit it out of the park, and don't immediately run out of the batter's box with their head down and not showing any kind of emotion. If they showed any kind of emotion, I guarantee you he would be punked the next time up, or the batter behind him would go get hit.
Okay. Well,
good. To me, it's like, that's Bush League. To me.
It is.
To me, that's Bush League. If you're going to dude, get the guy out. Shut up and get the guy out. You know what I mean?
Make a good enough pitch. Now,
and Braves fans are like, some Braves fans, I'm not painting them with the broad brush, but a good bit of them have this holier than thou attitude about baseball. And it gets agonizingly, and it gets on my nerves at times. Dude, you've been to the World, you won the division title umpteen times, and you got one World Series, and they want to talk about, we're the team of the 90s. No, you're not.
You're not.
You're not. Dude, if anything, the Toronto Blue Jays got more of a right to it than you do.
They do. They do. Now, ran over, or you still got more to say? Because I got something to say.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Okay,
I'm done.
Look, let me tell you something, D. Let me tell you something. Now, the Braves, right? They had gone 2 previous times and they had lost, right? They didn't get there in 93. And come on, they had the strike in 94, but they wouldn't have gotten there in 94 either, because that was the Expos year. They wouldn't have gotten there. They wouldn't have gotten there either. Now, in 95, after you've lost 2 previous times now, you begging me to come out to the park just to see you lose again? Probably. No, I'm not going. You know what I mean? And then you got to think about, Atlanta isn't like it is now, like all ratchet and all that. This was the good Atlanta back in the 90s when it was the burgeoning hip hop scene. We had Dominique Wilkins, we had Ric Flair, we had Dusty Rhodes, we even had NWO. You remember that?
Yes.
Then we also, I don't know if I should say this. We also had a place called Magic City in the 90s.
Yes,
too.
absolutely. Everybody knows about Magic City.
If you think I'm going to stop what I'm doing to go see the Braves instead of go to Magic City, you're crazy. I'm not. So I'm going to skip this just so you lose anyway. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm not going. And then just like I told you the other day, just to make this a bit more personable, right? Now, I don't know how I'm going to say this, but before I say this, this was 30 years ago. So, I'll keep the names out of it to protect the innocent and
the guilty.
and the guilty and the current ladies in our lives. I didn't even know that you guys existed at the time. So we'll do that. Now, you remember now, we were in school together, we'll just call her, was she Texas or Alabama? Texas, right?
What?
She was from Texas, right?
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking
Texas.
about. Yeah, Texas.
We'll call it
Southeast Texas. We call it Texas.
We'll call it Southeast Texas, right? Nice looking young lady. You were smitten with her and all of that. And just imagine, you talk to her a couple times, and then you hang out with her a couple times. She don't give you no rhythm in terms of that. If you got a shot or any interest or whatever.
Right.
Okay. If she call you again the third time, and you like, well, and she like, well, come out with me tonight. You're like, man, I ain't going out there, man. That's a waste of time. You
would definitely be kind of like, I don't know, because the last 2 times was a disaster. I would, me personally, it would depend on who we're talking about. I would consider it leaning towards no.
Well,
okay, that's just me. I would consider it with a serious lean to the no.
I'm not going,
but I would consider it. I give people the benefit of the doubt. You, on the other hand, you don't.
I got better things to do.
You got better. Yeah, that's you.
I'll count all the tiles on my kitchen floor and make sure all my shoestrings even in the shoes in my closet. I got to do that tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not coming messing around with you tonight, man. Then
I got to organize my sock drawer.
Exactly. Then besides that, if California came a calling, we call her California, right?
Yeah.
Man, we not messing around with no loser. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you did, like I told you the other day, like
you would tell me something.
You wouldn't be hanging with me because you would be considered a sucker then. You a sucker. Now, I do fully acknowledge that I am being the utmost hypocritical because at the exact same time, I was probably the biggest sucker that you knew at the time. You know what I mean? I was definitely.
I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it.
I was the biggest sucker that you knew at the time. You know what I mean? Because
I wouldn't call you that, Chuck. But since you just said it,
I was a sucker. I was straight up a sucker. I'm not going to even sit here and lie to you, because I was in one of these college long distance relationships, folks. And let me just kind of put it like this: I abided by the relationship while the other individual didn't. And
right.
I used to be on D's couch all the time, crying and all of that and whining. And I know she used to just want to say, man, she gone, bro. And just want to, I wish you had slapped me then. I honestly wish you had slapped me.
Wouldn't do that, man. I
would have deserved it. And that's all I'm saying about the Braves, man. Like, look, you have shown a propensity to not produce the outcome that I want. I'm not going to waste my time on that. You know what I mean?
I could understand if you would say that like in 99 or 2000 or 2001 when they had gone to the playoffs and basically froze up every single year. You had a 2-0 lead on the Yankees in the 96 series, and then you lose 4 straight. Okay, including having a lead in Game 6. Okay, and then blowing the lead at home. You know what I mean? Okay. So, no, by that time, you're like, okay, your argument would be valid. I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, when you get to like 98, 99, where the Braves are in the Braves are going to the World Series. They go to the World Series in 99 against the Yankees and get swept. By that time, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So,
but.
By 1995, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you a little leeway because this is still new. And plus you got Braves fans that they remember the Braves from the late 70s and all the way up to like 87, 88, 89, when the Braves were only winning like 60 games a year barely.
Rick Miller was their number one.
Pascual Perez and
Rafael Ramirez,
yeah.
Claudel Washington, Bruce Eggs Benedict,
yep.
Glenn Hubbard. Boy, they were garbage. But let me tell you this though, and you know me well enough to know this, right?
Right.
Like with David Justice did. Shout out to him. He was dating Halle Berry at the time too.
Absolutely.
Shout out
yeah.
to him. You know what I mean? But anyway, you know me well enough to know if you want to guarantee I don't do something, come at me like I better do something. You know what I mean? You come at me. Well, basically, you better come out or you better do this, you better do that. You've just sealed your fate. You're
gonna do it now for sure.
Even if it's to my own detriment, I'm not doing it now. Just because you're trying to make me do it. It's not happening. You know what I mean? So that's all. And then and then basically briefly on the Bo Sox, man, Papa got a brand new excuse, bro. You know I can't stand people that make excuses. Whenever just like now, I admitted I was the biggest sucker you knew.
But you admit it, though. You admit it.
If I come up short and I'm lacking, I will tell you. You know what I mean? But I don't make excuses. I'll tell you in a minute, man. Look, bro, that wasn't it, bro. I was whack. I didn't get it done. I don't make excuses, and I can't stand people that do.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode. We just wanted to give you a little something different. You know, we usually give a shout out or whatever at this point of the program, but tonight we decided let's do something different. Yours truly with a rant, which is something that I don't normally do all that often, but when I do, you know, and this was asked for. Chuck had asked me to do this. You know, it felt good. It felt good to cleanse the system, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? I'm not as good as him, but at the same time.
Welcome to the dark side, brother. You know.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, man, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and also thank Chuck for also joining us as well. And after this short break, we're going to close it out right here. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, the place to give you the best of sports from back in the day. Thank you so much once again for joining us here at the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. This podcast, of course, comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio in the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to the show to get new episodes whenever they are released. Also, if you would like to contact the show or perhaps maybe give some story ideas or maybe tell us how we did or maybe just say hi, please email us at historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. Once again, that email address, historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. And as always, please don't forget to, please don't keep us a secret. Tell your people about us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street if you have to, if you think that they like sports history. It would really, really help us out. Once again, thanks again for joining us. Peace.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude. And I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, you know, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.